Fatima's English Challenge, 1 word a day. A motivational story. Chapter 1, The Beginning of a Dream. Fatima sat by the window, watching the children play outside. She had always dreamed of speaking English fluently, but every time she tried, the words stuck in her throat. "How can I ever learn?" she whispered to herself. One evening, her younger brother, Ahmed, brought home an old English book. "Fatima, you can start with 1 word a day," he suggested. She laughed. "1 word? That will take forever?" But Ahmed smiled. "1 step at a time, Apa. You'll see the difference." That night, Fatima chose her first word, hope. She repeated it softly, writing it in her notebook. It felt small, but something inside her stirred. Maybe, just maybe, this could work. The next morning, she whispered, hope. A feeling of determination rose in her heart. This was her beginning. Chapter 2, Facing the Fear. Fatima's biggest fear was speaking in front of others. Every time she tried, her hands would shake, and her voice would tremble. What if they laugh at me, she thought. Ahmed noticed her hesitation. "Fatima, mistakes are part of learning," he said. "You have to be brave." That night, she picked her next word, brave. She wrote it on a small paper and kept it in her pocket. Throughout the day, whenever fear crept in, she touched the paper and whispered, brave. By evening, she gathered her courage. "Mama, I learned a new word today," she said. "It's brave." Her mother smiled. "And that is exactly what you are, my dear." Chapter 3, The First Conversation. A week passed, and Fatima had learned 7 words, hope, brave, dream, learn, try, believe, and shine. But she hadn't used them in a real conversation yet. One afternoon, while at the market, she saw a tourist struggling to communicate with a shopkeeper. She hesitated but then remembered her word of the day, try. She stepped forward and said in broken English, "Can I help?" The tourist smiled and nodded. Fatima helped him understand the price, using simple words. When he left, Ahmed clapped. "Apa, you did it!" Fatima couldn't believe it. She had spoken English outside her home. It was a small step, but it felt like a giant leap. Chapter 4, The Power of Consistency. Every day, Fatima continued her challenge. She learned 1 word, wrote it, spoke it, and tried to use it in real life. Some words were easy, some were hard, but she never missed a day. One day, her teacher noticed her effort. "Fatima, your English is improving," she said. Fatima blushed. "Really?" Her teacher nodded. "Words have power, and you are using them wisely. Keep going." That night, Fatima chose her next word, success. She knew she was still far from fluent, but for the first time, she believed she would get there, 1 word at a time. Chapter 5, The Struggle of Learning. Fatima's journey was not easy. Some days, she felt excited to learn a new word, while on other days, she wanted to give up. English felt like a mountain too high to climb. One evening, after struggling to pronounce the word opportunity, she threw her notebook on the bed in frustration. "I can't do this," she cried. Ahmed, hearing her frustration, entered the room. "Fatima, do you remember the first time you tried to cook?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes, I burned the rice." "But did you stop cooking after that?" Ahmed smiled. She shook her head. "No, I tried again." "Exactly," Ahmed said. "English is the same. It's okay to make mistakes, but you have to keep going." That night, Fatima chose her word, persistence. As she wrote it down, she whispered to herself, "I will keep going. I will not stop." The next morning, she stood in front of the mirror and practiced saying her new word. At first, it sounded strange, but after repeating it several times, she smiled. "I did it!" She learned an important lesson that day. Struggles were part of the journey, but giving up was not an option. Chapter 6, the first public speaking attempt. Weeks passed, and Fatima's vocabulary grew. Every day, she carried a notebook where she wrote her new word, its meaning, and a sentence using it. But speaking in front of people was still a challenge. One day, her teacher announced, "Next week, we will have a speaking competition. Each student must say a few lines in English." Fatima's heart sank. How will I speak in front of the whole class, she thought. That night, she picked her word, confidence. She repeated it over and over. But repeating a word was different from feeling it. Ahmed saw her worried face. "Apa, remember when you spoke to the tourist? You can do this." Fatima sighed. That was different. This is in front of the whole class. Ahmed had an idea. "Practice with me first." She hesitated, but then took a deep breath and began. She stumbled on words, mispronounced a few, but she kept going. By the end of her speech, Ahmed clapped. That was great. Fatima still felt nervous, but she whispered to herself, confidence. I can do this. The day of the competition arrived. As she stood in front of her class, her hand shook. She saw her teacher smiling at her, encouraging her to begin. Taking a deep breath, she spoke. Her sentences were simple, and her voice trembled, but she spoke. When she finished, the class clapped. She had done it. It wasn't perfect, but she had tried. That day, Fatima didn't just learn a new word. She had lived it. Chapter 7, The Unexpected Compliment. The next day, something surprising happened. As Fatima entered the classroom, her teacher smiled at her. Fatima, you were very brave yesterday. Your speech was wonderful. Fatima couldn't believe it. Her speech had mistakes, and she had been nervous, but her teacher still appreciated her effort. During lunch, a classmate named Aisha came to her. Fatima, how do you learn English so well? Fatima blinked in surprise. Me? Learning well? Yes. Aisha said. I heard you practicing words every day. Tell me your secret. Fatima smiled. One word a day. That's my secret. Aisha looked curious. Just one word? Fatima nodded. Yes. I learn a word, write it, say it, and try to use it. And I never skip a day. Aisha thought for a moment. Maybe I should try that too. That night, Fatima picked a new word, inspire. She realized that her journey was not just about her anymore. She was inspiring others to learn too. Her heart swelled with pride. Learning English was not just about speaking a language. It was about growth, courage, and helping others believe in themselves too. Chapter 8, The Challenge of Writing. While Fatima was improving in speaking, she still found writing difficult. Every time she wrote a sentence, she felt unsure. Is this correct? She wondered. Her teacher noticed her hesitation and gave her a simple task. Fatima, start a diary. Write just one sentence a day in English. A sentence? Fatima asked, surprised. Yes, her teacher said. Just like you learn one word a day, write one sentence a day. Fatima decided to try. That night, she wrote her first sentence in her diary. Today, I learned the word inspire. It was a small step, but just like her one-word challenge, it was the beginning of something bigger. As days passed, her sentences became longer. She made mistakes, but instead of feeling discouraged, she corrected them and learned from them. One evening, Ahmed looked at her diary and said, Apa, you are not just learning English. You are creating a story, your own story. Fatima smiled. Yes, and this is just the beginning. She chose her next word, journey. Because that's what learning was, a journey, not a destination. Chapter 9, The Fear of Making Mistakes. Fatima sat by the window, staring at the sky. A cool evening breeze touched her face, but her mind was troubled. She had been learning English for months now, one word a day, practicing conversations, writing in her diary, but something still held her back. No matter how much she learned, she was still afraid of making mistakes. Every time she tried to speak, her mind filled with doubts. What if I say something wrong? What if people laugh at me? These thoughts stopped her from speaking freely. That evening, Ahmed found her sitting quietly. "Apa, what happened? Why do you look so sad?" Fatima sighed. "I still feel scared. I know so many words now, but when I try to speak, I feel like I will say something wrong." Ahmed smiled. "Fatima, do you remember when you were little and you first learned how to ride a bicycle?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, I fell many times before I could ride properly." "Exactly," Ahmed said. "Did you stop riding because you fell?" Fatima shook her head. "No. I kept trying until I could ride without falling." "That's the same with English, Apa," Ahmed said. "Mistakes are part of learning. If you don't make mistakes, how will you improve?" Fatima listened carefully. Ahmed was right. She had never stopped riding a bicycle because of falling, so why should she stop speaking English because of mistakes? That night, she picked her new word, mistake. She wrote in her diary, "Mistakes are not failures. They are lessons." The next morning, she promised herself, "I will not be afraid of mistakes anymore. I will speak, even if I am wrong." Chapter 10, The Library Discovery. One day, Fatima's teacher announced that their school library had received a new collection of English books. "Anyone who wants to improve their English should start reading," she said. Fatima had never thought about reading English books. "How can I read a whole book when I still struggle with sentences?" she thought. After school, she hesitantly walked into the library. The shelves were full of books with colorful covers. She ran her fingers over the spines, feeling nervous. Then, she saw a small book titled A Little Girl's Dream. Something about the title felt familiar. Carefully, she pulled the book out and opened it. The words looked difficult, but she decided to take the book home. That evening, she sat down with the book and started reading. The first sentence confused her. She had to check the dictionary for almost every word. It was frustrating, but she didn't give up. 1 hour later, she had only read one page, but she felt a strange sense of achievement. "I can read English," she whispered to herself. She picked her word of the day, read. She wrote in her diary, "Reading is like opening a door to a new world." From that day, she spent half an hour every evening reading, slowly understanding more words, and feeling proud of herself. Chapter 11, A Letter to Herself. Fatima's teacher gave an unusual assignment, write a letter to your future self in English. Fatima stared at the blank paper. How can I write a whole letter, she wondered. But then she remembered, one word at a time. She started slowly. Dear future Fatima, I hope you are speaking English fluently now. I know it is hard, but remember how far you have come. You started with one word a day, and now you can write a letter. Never stop learning. Mistakes are okay. Keep trying. I believe in you. Love. Past Fatima. When she finished, she smiled. I did it. I wrote a letter in English. She picked her word for the day, believe. She wrote in her diary, the first person who must believe in you is yourself. That night, she slept peacefully, feeling confident that her future self would be proud of her. Chapter 12, The English Speaking Club. One afternoon, Fatima's teacher made an announcement, we are starting an English speaking club. Every student who joins must promise to speak only in English during meetings. Fatima's heart raced. Could she really do this? Aisha, her classmate, nudged her. We should join. But what if I say something wrong? Fatima hesitated. Aisha laughed. That's the whole point of learning. Come on, let's do it together. Fatima thought about all the words she had learned, all the times she had practiced in front of the mirror, and all the sentences she had written in her diary. She was ready. The first club meeting was nerve-wracking. The teacher asked everyone to introduce themselves in English. When it was Fatima's turn, she stood up. Her hands trembled, but she took a deep breath. My name is Fatima. I am learning English. One word, every day. Her voice was shaky, but the entire class clapped. Fatima felt a rush of happiness. She had spoken in front of a group. That night, she picked her new word, courage. She wrote in her diary, "Courage is speaking, even when your voice shakes." She knew she still had a long way to go, but she had taken another step forward. Chapter 13, The Unexpected Test. One day, the English teacher surprised the class with a test. You must write a short paragraph about your daily routine, in English. Fatima panicked. A whole paragraph? She stared at the blank paper, but then she reminded herself, I have been writing in my diary every day. I can do this. Slowly, she wrote. Every morning, I wake up early. I pray and eat breakfast. Then, I go to school. I learn new things. In the evening, I read my English book and write in my diary. Every night, I learn a new word. When she finished, she read her paragraph again. It wasn't perfect, but she had done it. The next day, when the teacher returned the tests, Fatima was shocked. She had scored 9 out of 10. Her teacher smiled. See, Fatima? You are improving every day. Fatima's heart filled with pride. She picked her word for the day, improve. She wrote in her diary, every small step is an improvement. Keep going. She had started this journey with doubt, but now, she believed in herself more than ever. Chapter 14, The Festival of Words. A month had passed since Fatima joined the English speaking club. Every day, she learned a new word, wrote in her diary, and practiced speaking. She had made progress, but a new challenge awaited her. One morning, her English teacher entered the classroom with a bright smile. Students, we are organizing an English festival next week. Every student must participate in a small English activity, poetry, storytelling, or speech. The class buzzed with excitement. But Fatima's heart sank. A speech? In front of everyone? In English? Aisha nudged her. You should participate, Fatima. Fatima hesitated. I don't think I'm ready. But you've been learning for so long. You even spoke in the English speaking club. You can do this. Aisha encouraged her. Fatima wanted to believe it, but her fear of speaking in public still held her back. That evening, she sat in front of her diary, staring at the empty page. What if I forget my words? What if people laugh at me, she wrote. Then, she took a deep breath. I have worked hard. I will not let fear stop me. I will try. She picked her word for the day, try. She wrote, trying is the first step toward success. Chapter 15, Writing the Speech. The next morning, Fatima went to her teacher. I want to give a speech at the festival. Her teacher beamed. That's wonderful, Fatima. What will you speak about? Fatima thought for a moment. I want to talk about my journey of learning English. Perfect. Write your speech, practice every day, and don't forget to enjoy the experience, her teacher said. That afternoon, Fatima sat with her notebook. She wrote slowly, carefully choosing her words. My name is Fatima, and I am learning English one word a day. When I started, I was scared. I thought I would never speak. But every day, I took one step forward. I made mistakes, but I kept trying. Today, I am standing here, speaking in English. This is my journey, and it is just the beginning. She read it aloud. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. That night, she picked her word, journey. She wrote, every journey begins with a single step. She smiled. This was her journey, and she was proud of it. Chapter 16, The Stage Fright. The night before the festival, Fatima lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. Her heart pounded with fear. What if I forget my words? What if my voice shakes? What if I embarrass myself? She got up, took her diary, and read all the words she had learned: courage, believe, try, improve, journey. She whispered to herself, I have come so far. I will not stop now. The next morning, as she walked into school, her hands felt cold. The stage looked bigger than ever. She saw other students practicing their poems and speeches. Aisha ran up to her. Are you ready? Fatima took a deep breath. I think so. Her teacher called her name. It was time. Fatima stepped onto the stage. The audience looked at her, students, teachers, even her little brother, Ahmed. She closed her eyes for a moment. I can do this. She took a deep breath and began. My name is Fatima, and I am learning English one word a day. Her voice shook at first, but as she continued, her confidence grew. She saw smiles in the audience. Her teacher nodded with encouragement. Ahmed's eye sparkled with pride. When she finished, there was silence for a moment. Then, applause. Fatima's eyes widened. They were clapping for her. Tears of happiness filled her eyes. She had done it. That night, she picked her word, confidence. She wrote, confidence is believing in yourself, even when you are afraid. For the first time, she truly believed she could do anything. Chapter 17, The Special Invitation. The day after the festival, Fatima was still overwhelmed by the applause. She had never felt so proud. But something even more surprising happened. Her teacher approached her with a warm smile. Fatima, the principal was very impressed by your speech. She wants you to give another speech at the next school assembly. Fatima's eyes widened. The whole school? Yes, her teacher said. It will inspire many students who are afraid to learn English. Fatima's heart raced. This was bigger than the festival. Could she do it? She thought back to the words she had learned. She had come so far. I will do it, she said firmly. That evening, she picked her word, brave. She wrote, being brave does not mean you are not afraid. It means you keep going, even when you are scared. She was scared, but she was ready. Chapter 18, A Letter from a Stranger. A few days before her big speech, Fatima received an unexpected note. It was from a younger student named Sana. Dear Fatima Apa, I saw you give your speech at the festival. I also want to learn English, but I feel scared. When I saw you speak, I felt hope. Can you help me learn? Tears filled Fatima's eyes. Someone was looking up to her. She was an inspiration. She wrote back. Dear Sana, I would love to help you. I will teach you the way I learned, one word a day. Remember, mistakes are okay. Just keep going. Love, Fatima. She had started her journey alone, but now, she was guiding someone else. That night, she picked her word, inspire. She wrote, inspiring others is the greatest success. She never imagined that her journey would help someone else. But now, she knew, this was just the beginning. Chapter 19, The Biggest Stage Yet. The day of the school assembly arrived. Fatima stood backstage, her hands trembling. The entire school was gathered, hundreds of students, teachers, and even the principal. This was bigger than anything she had ever done before. She clutched her diary close to her chest. She had written and rewritten her speech, practicing every night. She had even rehearsed in front of the mirror, whispering words of encouragement to herself. I have done this before. I can do it again. Aisha appeared by her side. You look nervous, she said gently. Fatima let out a shaky breath. I am. What if I mess up? Aisha smiled. Remember your word for the day? Fatima thought for a moment. She had chosen the word fearless. She had written last night, being fearless does not mean you never feel fear. It means you face it anyway. She straightened her shoulders. I will be fearless. The principal called her name. And now, we invite Fatima, a student who has shown incredible determination in learning English, to share her journey with us. The auditorium fell silent as she stepped onto the stage. She took a deep breath. My name is Fatima, and I have been learning English one word a day. As she spoke, she saw students leaning forward, listening carefully. Some nodded, some smiled. When she spoke about her fears, she noticed a few girls whispering, as if they related to her struggles. By the time she finished, the entire hall erupted in applause. Fatima felt something powerful. This wasn't just about English anymore. It was about confidence, courage, and believing in oneself. She walked off the stage, her heart light with joy. She had done it. That night, she picked her word, victory. She wrote, victory is not just about winning. It is about overcoming yourself. Chapter 20, The Teacher's Offer. The next day, Fatima was called to the staff room. Her English teacher was waiting with a proud smile. Fatima, the principal and I were very impressed with your speech, she said. You have come a long way. And now, we want you to help other students. Fatima blinked. Help, how? We are starting a one-word-a-day program for younger students who struggle with English. Would you like to lead it? Fatima's heart skipped a beat. A few months ago, she was too afraid to even speak in class. Now, she was being asked to teach? She thought of little Sana's letter. There must be many others like her, students who were afraid but wanted to learn. She smiled. I would love to. That night, she picked her word, leader. She wrote, a true leader is one who lifts others up. Chapter 21, The First Lesson. A week later, Fatima stood in front of a small group of younger students. Their faces were filled with uncertainty, the same fear she once had. She held up her diary. Do you know how I started learning English? The students shook their heads. One word a day, she said with a smile. And today, we will start with our first word, hope. She wrote it on the board. Hope means believing that something good will happen. Like you all, I was once scared of English. But I had hope. And now, I am here. And so will you. The students listened with wide eyes. Some hesitated, but soon they repeated the word after her. Fatima felt warmth spread in her chest. She was making a difference. That night, she picked her word, change. She wrote, change starts with one small step. She had taken her step. Now, she was helping others take theirs. Chapter 22, A Letter from the Principal. Months passed. Fatima continued teaching younger students, guiding them just as she had been guided. Every day, they learned a new word. Slowly but surely, their confidence grew. One morning, Fatima received a letter from the principal's office. She opened it, her hands shaking. Dear Fatima, your dedication and hard work have not gone unnoticed. Your efforts in helping others learn English have made a great impact. As a recognition of your achievement, we would like to present you with a special award at the school's annual day ceremony. Fatima stared at the letter in disbelief. An award? For her? She ran to Aisha, waving the letter in excitement. Can you believe this? Aisha grinned. Of course. You earned it. That night, Fatima picked her word, achievement. She wrote, true achievement is not about being the best. It is about becoming better than you were before. Chapter 23, The Annual Day Award. The school's annual day arrived, and Fatima sat in the front row with the other honored students. Her name was called, and she walked to the stage, her heart racing. The principal handed her a beautiful trophy. Fatima, your journey of learning English has been inspiring. But what makes you truly special is that you chose to help others. Keep shining. As she accepted the award, the entire school clapped. Among the crowd, she saw her younger students cheering for her. Tears welled in her eyes. This moment was proof that her hard work had mattered. That night, she picked her word, proud. She wrote, "Proud is not about what others think of you. It is about knowing that you gave your best." And tonight, she truly felt proud. Chapter 24, A New Dream. Fatima sat in her room, holding her diary. She flipped through the pages, seeing all the words she had learned. Hope. Confidence. Brave. Inspire. Change. Victory. Each word was a step in her journey. She realized something: this was not the end. She wanted to do more. She wanted to write a book about her journey. A book that would help other students who were scared like she once was. She picked up her pen. Her final word for the night: dream. She wrote, "Dream big, and take small steps toward it every day." Her journey was not over. It was just beginning. Chapter 25, One Word, One Future. Years later, Fatima stood in front of a crowd, holding her published book titled One Word a Day, My English Journey. She had become an inspiration for many students across the country. Schools invited her to speak, and young learners followed her method. She stood in front of a new class of students and smiled. "Let's start with the first word," she said. She turned to the board and wrote, "Begin." And just like that, another journey started. The end.